joined now by Administrator of the United States Environmental Protection Agency, Lee Zeldin, an old friend of the program. Mr. Administrator, welcome back. Great to see you. Congratulations. You're doing great stuff over at EPA.
Thank you. It's great to be with you, Hugh.
Well, rather than throw softballs, though, I want to throw 4 hard questions at you in the 10 minutes I've got. Number 1, I read your March 7th policy on elevation. You know, I spent 25 years working with Region 9. Elevation routinely abused my clients. They would elevate 404 permits. They would elevate this. They would elevate that. Why not put a policy into place that no one gets to elevate anything unless Lee Zeldin approves it first? And if, like challenge flags in the NFL, if they try and elevate the wrong things twice, you fire that person.
Right. Well, you know, I'm not going to be able to answer for last administrations or future administrations, but as far as this one at the Trump EPA, we are fast-tracking approvals. We are working closely with these other agencies. We have the power to gum up the works. We also have the power to speed things up, and we're utilizing that power. What we do want elevated up to headquarters is we want to be involved in these key decisions where we're trying to get pipelines over the finish line. We've been to Alaska. There's the talk of Nessie and Constitution. And there's Enbridge in the Great Lakes area. There's a big natural gas pipeline in the Southwest going from New Mexico to Arizona. We're also reconsidering the definition of waters of the United States, which also has implications on this particular topic. But we are fast-tracking everything across the board all year long, consistently and proudly.
How many elevations have you done this year, though? That really does gum up the work. It screwed so many of my clients for 25 years that, you know, you got bureaucrats down way below you. Oh, we're going to elevate this. And all of a sudden, your project's dead in the water.
Yeah, no, we haven't slowed anything down over the course of this year. We've just been speeding things up. We have headquarters getting involved with the regions, but not for the purpose of making sure that anything goes any slower. It's to ensure that there's total accountability and involvement, that the administration's priorities are being implemented. And that means getting this stuff done as quickly as we can. And part of that process with the headquarters and myself wanting to have more oversight and involvement is that when the president calls me about these projects, he's not just calling me about the EPA decisions, the EPA equities. He'll ask me, what other agencies in the federal government are preventing this particular proposal from getting done? So we are able to blow through any type of bureaucratic red tape, not just in our own agencies, but helping the president get through red tape in other agencies too.
Well, Godspeed on that. Second suggestion, Mr. Administrator, there are tens of thousands of permit applicants out there and thousands of people who are subject to enforcement actions by EPA. You know what captain's mast is when the Navy ship commander brings in whoever's been accused of doing wrong or they got a complaint. Why not once a month grab all your administrators, your associate administrators, all your regional directors, and let permit applicants talk to you directly about their permit, put a career staffer on the other side of the room, and you render a decision. And similarly, if someone's the subject of an enforcement action and they're getting screwed, they have a chance to talk to Lee Zeldin, because I got confidence in Lee Zeldin. I do not have confidence in your career people. And you issue decisions. Why not let that happen?
So I have been meeting directly with all sorts of different individuals, companies investing in our country. We are fast-tracking permits all across the entire country. And to the same point that I gave as it relates to your last question, the president personally gets involved in some of this work as well. So there's that level of total accountability across the administration. I've been to 38 states so far. We have a very busy October coming up of continuing to travel all throughout the entire country. When I'm traveling, I am often meeting with these project proponents in that particular municipality, in that state, in that region, to help get this stuff over the finish line. And those meetings, by the way, aren't just about their permit requests as it relates to interacting with EPA. I am often interacting with them as it relates to their larger permit request and that federal process. And also in the spirit of advancing cooperative federalism, we're often engaging state partners to make sure that the states are getting this stuff done. On the enforcement and compliance effort, This was a priority of mine out of the gate. I sat down with the people in our Office of Enforcement of Compliance. I want to make sure that there's no one inside of that team going rogue. I want fairness and consistency. There are plenty of people out there who are private actors who understand that there's environmental issues that need to be remediated on their property. They want to work with the agency to be able to deal with that land and water contamination that either they inherited from someone who had their property before them, or maybe they were responsible for it. Maybe they're on a Superfund site. Maybe it has something to do with a brownfield site. And it is such a better policy than just coming in, wanting the heavy hand, the stick of enforcement, and then you end up not getting that investment from that private actor because they're immediately engaged in some conflicted adversarial legal battle. And maybe they're not so inclined to invest in that remediation because they're busy, taking the advice of their attorney to battle to the death with litigation inside of courts.
Yeah, usually it was my experience. We couldn't get to the administrator. We can get to Region 9, Felicia Marcus, somebody like that, once in a blue moon. But normally, if you make yourself available, people will come to you. Question 3. This is A. You've done a great job in the California fires. EPA and the Corps have done a great job. But my friends in the fire zone tell me nothing or very little is getting built. That's the city, the county, the regional agencies, and the state. Can you go out there and bring attention to the fact that Gavin Newsom isn't doing crap to get those houses rebuilt?
Hey, Hugh, this is a really big issue. I raised this at the last cabinet meeting. President Trump had the media in there for over 3 hours. And President Trump went around the room like he always does during these cabinet meetings. And when it came to me, I made a point of talking about not just the EPA's response to take care of all of our hazardous material removal phase 1 effort in less than 30 days, but the Army Corps then came in, they completed their phase 2 debris removal. The federal government did everything that we need to do in record time. And as you just pointed out, a lot of these locals who want to be able to build on their property have struggled to get the permits from that local government. They're not getting the support from the state. That's why we amplified it at that cabinet meeting. That's why, here we are talking about this here. And there should be no finger pointing from any of those local government officials at the federal government. President Trump has said it over and over again. I will reiterate it now. There are no property owners anywhere inside of that fire area. Over 13,000 properties were destroyed. Nobody is waiting for any action or approval from the federal government. The Trump administration, working with all of our agencies, that process is done. We did it historically fast, and we're proud of it.
I am very glad that we can underscore that, because Gavin and Karen Bass are screwing those people over out of their property rights. Last question, because your team told me 10 minutes. Let's pause right here. I taped this right before the program, and I don't have enough time. I ended up talking to the administrator for 12 minutes and 22 seconds. His staff, who were insisting on 10 minutes, are probably mad at me, but the administrator went long. So I'll put that in the segment 3 after Senator Cotton comes along in the next segment. Let me tell you about ALEC, because it matters to what Administrator Zeldin and I were just talking about. The American Legislative Exchange Council is a sponsor of this program. They do serious work with state legislators across the United States to try and get them to adopt model policies that will improve the life in their states. They do things like Rich States, Poor States, a book that you can get at richstatespoorstates.com for free that compares the various policy frameworks of the 50 states and while there are rich states and why there are rich states like Utah and Florida and why there are poor states like California and New York. It's all about law. It's all about regulation. It's all about not rebuilding houses in a place like California. ALEC knows what to compare, how to compare it, and how to evaluate what is going on in each of these states. I'd like you to get smart about federalism and to leave the states that aren't working and move to the states that are working. And you can do that with richstatespoorstates.com, or better yet, if you're a state legislator or a business that's regulated by the state, or you've got any contact with your state or local government, you really want to get their newsletter. American Legislative Exchange Council puts out a newsletter on the state of the states once a week. They tell you all the stuff that's going on in the states. It can be yours for free if you go to alec.org/Hugh, alec.org/Hugh. And when you do that, you'll get enrolled and you'll find that you are, in fact, a beneficiary of the knowledge you need to talk to your state legislators and your state elected officials about getting your state turned around in the right direction like Utah and Florida. Noah Rothman is senior writer for National Review. Noah, are you aware of any major media outlet that has done a serious, thorough, transparent, and ongoing classification of the acts of political violence that have occurred in the United States since the election of Donald Trump in 2016?
Well, at least my own account of that for Commentary Magazine in February of 2025, which I'm developing into a book that is going to come out in May. Beyond that, The Atlantic took a stab at it. I'm sorry?
George Packer's piece? It's an absurd piece. Are you referring to that one?
Yes, I am. In part because it maintains the illusion that a lot of the left-wing violence that we've experienced over the last decade can't be categorized as left-wing violence because it more fits into criminal violence, it more fits into public disorder, rioting, and then there's something that was published for the Department of Homeland Security, by the Department of Homeland Security for the Office of the Director of National Intelligence in 2021, in which the researchers quite bravely describe the degree to which scholarship in this area is stigmatized, is that there's category errors that are enforced and deliberately not corrected, that those who engage in research into AVEs, which is the term of art the FBI uses for left-wing violent extremists, anarchist extremists, that's the sort of thing that is sort of frowned upon in the industry. It's not necessarily a conspiracy, but it is a broad objection to the notion that left-wing political violence should be described as left-wing political violence. It's one of the things I
No, what I would like to do, I'm going to do it with Senator Cotton later as well, is run through incidents and have you say left-wing violence, right-wing violence, violence of crazy people, or other. The assassination.
Well, some don't fit categories. Some are hard to categorize, and one of the things that the FBI does
note,
let's
find them. There's apathetic theology is the definition of God by the characteristics he does not have. So this is apathetic criminology. We'll find out what doesn't fit. Assassination of Charlie, left-wing violence?
Yeah, undoubtedly left-wing violence. Left-wing violence that was inspired by left-wing propaganda, and the individuals who and the online environments in which these people descend into, where only one of the many pathologies is violent left-wing extremism. There are so many more that are on display, but yes, clearly.
Both assassination attempts on President Trump.
The first one is difficult to categorize because Mr. Crooks did not leave behind a digital footprint. So according to Selena Zito, who did the definitive book on the Butler assassination, it seemed more likely to her that he wanted historical renown, that he wanted his name to ring out. But we don't know a lot about the ideology to which he subscribed. We do know that Ruth, the gentleman who took the second shot at Donald Trump, certainly had a variety of ideological proclivities. Not all of them could be easily categorized, but he was very hostile towards the president's foreign policy record, called him a dictator, and was animated by opposition to Donald Trump. So I think you could fairly classify that as left-wing violence.
Attempt on Justice Kavanaugh?
Clearly left-wing violence. Obviously left-wing violence.
Attempt to kill the GOP congressional softball practice members?
Left-wing violence, yes. That individual was radicalized by the infotainment sphere. And was a major supporter of Bernie Sanders and a dedicated viewer of Rachel Maddow. It's hard to say otherwise.
Murderous attacks on the religious schools in Minneapolis and Nashville.
Yeah, so these have a political valence, I would say. Quite a lot of these attacks are committed by individuals who are deeply disturbed and deranged. They are radicalized by online elements that you could fairly say subscribe to left-wing ideologies. The executors of that violence are a little bit more disturbed. But once again, the FBI describes this as salad bar terrorism. It's actually a term of art that describes the addled mind's attraction to a variety of seemingly contradictory ideological prescriptions that nevertheless fit within the rubric of left-wing violence, in part because the
Do we
people
know
who
the
observe them
genesis of
make
that?
them fit there.
That's a stupid term. I'm just going to say salad. That's just stupid. Do we know the genesis of that? Is that some PhD somewhere in some state university that's never been heard of before?
I don't know the provenance of that phrase, but it seems
Do you
to me
think
to
that's
be
a
rather
stupid
apt.
phrase?
I don't know, the addled mind, the violent mind of
No,
an
the
addled
salad
mind.
bar. The salad bar
Yeah,
stuff.
I understand the critique of it. I find it rather helpful to describe what a manic mind is attracted to, which is extremism in many, many forms. And the executors of violence are often quite deranged. That doesn't mean that they're not left wing. And certainly one of the
That,
problems that I try to address here is that the spectatorship, the cheering section, the peanut gallery, which is undeniably attracted to left wing ideas, encourages this sort of thing. And that is what is spinning out of control.
yeah, we've had 3 attacks on ICE facilities, including yesterday's, in 3 months. Do you know enough to categorize those?
The most recent one, I would say, I'm inclined to say left-wing terrorism, but it just happened, and I don't know enough about the perpetrator to say. The 2 that preceded it most certainly were the individual who was radicalized, who attacked ICE office, on July 7th, I believe, was attracted to ideology that was promoted by video games and anti-capitalist themes in video games. The attack on July 4th on a CBP facility was small cell terrorism. That was not just an individual that was radicalized. This is a group of 10 individuals who executed a sophisticated attack utilizing multiple angles and using explosive devices to lure out their targets. And the literature they left behind is undeniably radical and left-wing.
All right. The ABC studio in Sacramento that was fired into by a left-wing nut.
So, according to prosecutors, one of the things that animated him was the cancellation of Jimmy Kimmel. And what we heard over the course of the week prior to this attack was that, according to, for example, Senator Chris Murphy, the president had set out to eliminate, use that word, eliminate his critics in media. There's no sequence of events in which that holds up. The notion here that was bandied about by Democrats is that the president reached out and had his critic canceled. And then all of a sudden, 3 days later, he's back on the air. So what happened? Did the president just stop wanting to silence his critics? Did the FCC stop implying that it would impose compliance costs on media if they didn't shape up? No. It's just that the sequence of events that the Democrats imagined didn't occur. And yet, it had the consequence of radicalizing an individual who went out and could have killed people. He's going to spend a lot of years in jail as a result. But there's been no soul searching over any of this.
How about the
I think you
Fox
probably have to
News
say this guy was
van
left-wing.
attempted bombing? There was a Fox News van that had a bomb placed under it on September 12th. Do we know enough?
Yeah. That one I don't know enough about. I don't know if those individuals were left-wing, right-wing, whether they were jihadists, who, by the way, claim the largest body count in this country. Any list of domestic terrorism acts that doesn't outright say jihadist Islamic fundamentalism has claimed the most lives in this country.
I put that in the Islamist bucket. Yeah, I put the Islamist bucket differently. How about the country club murder, about which I am not certain?
Yeah, I'm not certain about that either. The book that I set out to write is not a compendium of left-wing attacks. It is designed to illustrate the phenomenon broadly.
Can I keep you during the break, because I want to go through the final 5 I've got here. Don't go anywhere. Noah Rothman is my guest. We'll post it over at YouTube. I'm just trying to get people thinking about the way Noah does in Clockwork Blue, the piece for commentary. What's going on here? And where's it coming from? Because it's spiraling, and it's very, very bad for the country. I've got 4 more to ask your reactions to, Noah. The murder of the Hartmans. I've heard competing accounts of this. What do you think? The Minnesota former speaker and her husband and the other legislators who were threatened but not murdered.
Well, so the individual was described as conservative by his friends and had a list of Democrats that he set out to attack and abortion activists and providers, which would point to right-wing lunacy. And yet, it seems more likely that the lunacy was far more pronounced than the conservatism. The individual had a bunch of rambling letters to the FBI. He delivered a jailhouse interview that was incomprehensible. He seems to have thought that he was a commando trained off the books by the U.S. military and was operating under the direction of Governor Walz to murder his Democratic opponents so that Amy Klobuchar could succeed somehow. He's a crazy person. More to the
All right,
point,
how about-
however.
Go ahead.
Just more to the point is that during that weekend, where there was saturation coverage of that assassination attempt, and duly so, there was a ton of violence at the No Kings rallies, none of which was covered. There was a riot in Los Angeles, there was a riot in Oakland, there was a riot in Portland, and nobody covered it or talked about it, in part because of the right-wing violence narrative, which has subsequently, I think, been at least muddled, if not fallen apart entirely.
All right, next, I'm going to stipulate January 6th and the Whitmer kidnap plot are right-wing violence. Any disagreement from you?
I do not disagree with that, and there's far more to it. There's more right-wing violence than we should be comfortable with. That doesn't mean that that is the foremost threat that we're dealing with right now.
And then finally, I don't know what to do with the riots following George Floyd. I don't think they're political.
I do. I certainly do. If you were
Tell
to
me
survey
why.
what the objectives, for example, let's just take the rioters for themselves, who devoted themselves to tearing down the symbols of the United States of America and its history, not just the Confederate generals that they duly reviled, but Abraham Lincoln, George Washington, TR, etc. They attacked the courthouses, federal symbols of federal authority. They were attacking political targets because they had political motives. And those political motives were explicated by the people in mainstream media and academia who sought to harness this violence in order to direct it towards political ends that they thought they could achieve through it. They wanted revolutionary change.
As Rich Lowry likes to say, 5 choices. Are all the examples we've gone through overwhelmingly left-wing, mostly left-wing, evenly divided, mostly right-wing, overwhelmingly right-wing?
Somewhere between mostly and I forget what the fourth one is, but somewhere between 5 and 4. Mostly left wing.
Okay. Overwhelmingly and mostly left wing.
Overwhelmingly and
That's
mostly,
what I think too. I'm going to run with the same scorecard with Senator Cotton, and we'll see what he comes up with. Noah C. Rothman, thank you. I'm looking forward to this book. Get back to work. Good to talk to you.
I'll talk to you about it.
I spoke with EPA Administrator Lee Zeldin earlier today. Here's the conclusion of that interview. Administrator, EPA's got 17,202 employees. When the government shut down, Russ Vought can do an RIF, a RIF, reduction in force of permanent government. How many of your 17,202 are essential? How many can be RIF'd?
So when we came in actually in January, the number of employees here was 16,155. We are going through reorganization right now. We've been leaning into this effort of finding efficiencies all year long. We haven't needed any motivation or prodding by anybody else. We've done it on our own initiative. We are in the process of going down to 12,500. We're reorging all of our program offices and headquarters. There are statutory obligations that Congress has put into law, statutory obligations requiring the EPA to do stuff under the Clean Air Act, Clean Water Act, Safe Drinking Water Act, CERCLA, RCRA, TSCA, and more. We inherited a lot of backlogs on these statutory obligations, 14,000 in pesticide review, several hundred with new chemicals, hundreds of state implementation plans backed up, a couple hundred of these small refinery exemptions. The list goes on of these backlogs that we inherited from our predecessors. We are going to do more with 12,500 employees of tackling these statutory obligations than our predecessor did with 16,155. It's about
Can you get below
focusing on
10,000, Mr. Administrator? Can you get below 10,000?
Well, what I don't want to do is be unable to fulfill our statutory obligations. So the plan is that we're going with 23% reduction from 16,155 to 12.5, and we're going to be assessing the performance of fulfilling those statutory obligations. But Hugh, I want to add one other point that's incredibly important to you and your listeners. You guys have been fighting for this for a long time. This deregulatory agenda, we're protecting the environment and growing the economy. This agency inherited a big mess from the Biden administration. We are going to do more deregulation in 1 year than entire federal governments have done across all presidencies, across all agencies, across entire terms of presidents. Just the proposed rescission of the 2009 endangerment finding alone would be, if finalized, the largest deregulatory action in the history of this country. So right now, our priority is to making sure that we are implementing the Trump mandate, that we are fulfilling the agenda that is demanded by the American public. We're going through these efficiencies. We're delivering the deregulatory work that the American public demands. And we are proudly also doing a lot to help protect our environment across the country. What I don't want to do is to come on air with you and others and tell you how we're falling on our face by not fulfilling a statutory obligation. And those are our priorities summed up here in a minute of where we have had our heads at over the course of this year. Oh, and by the way, I've canceled over $29 billion of grants. We've consolidated real estate. We've canceled media subscriptions. We closed the $4 million Biden EPA museum that nobody was going to. The list goes on of all of the ways to pursue efficiencies. The staff reductions end up amounting to over $750 million as well. So we have a zero tolerance policy towards wasting even a dollar of tax dollars, and that's something that we will continue to pursue going forward.
Thank you, Mr. Administrator. Next time, give me 30 minutes and we'll go over all of it. Great to talk to you. Congratulations. I appreciate what you've done and what you're going to do. Thank you, Administrator Lee Zeldin.
Thanks, Hugh.
And now, I do appreciate Lee Zeldin. I want to tell you about what else I appreciate. I appreciate Consumer Cellular, a sponsor of this program. Now, Consumer Cellular can be reached at 1-800-411-4454, 1-800-411-4454. Make sure you use my code HUGH25 when you call, because that'll get you an additional $5 off each of your first 5 monthly invoices if you make the switch. And you can have savings without sacrifice. Consumer Cellular will give you great service, great cell service across the United States, but you'll save money. You'll especially save money if you're over 50 years old, because they have 2 lines of unlimited data for $60 a month. No one else is going to beat that. But get your phone bill before you call them at 1-800-411-4454. Remember my code, HUGH25, or go to consumercellular.com/Hugh. Lots of you are doing this, and I know why. You're paying too much for your phone. Now, sometimes you use a lot of data. I have been listening to the Guardians beat the Tigers 5 out of 5 games over the last 7 days, and I listened to 4 games on WTAM 1100. So I'm using a lot of data, but Consumer Cellular keeps it cheap, because if you're over 50 and you want unlimited data, you make the switch in 20 minutes. Keep your phone, keep your number, keep your data. Just save money at consumercellular.com/Hugh or 1-800-411-4454. And don't forget my code, HUGH25. At the risk of my wonderful affiliate in Detroit, WDT, I think it's WDTKA. I'm not sure. I got to go back and look here. It's, WDTK. And it's the answer in Detroit. They've been an affiliate for 25 years. I love them. I'm sorry. I want to explain what's happening to the Tigers. The baseball gods looked up and they realized that the football gods had been mean to Cleveland for 25 years, 26 really, since 1999. And they said, we're going to make good to the people of Cleveland. So for 19 straight starts, Guardians pitchers have set a major league record. They've given up 19 starters in a row, less than 2 runs in a game, major league record. And they've had a September that continues to march on, in the words of Tom Hamilton, and it's remarkable. It's just absolutely remarkable. And on the other end of that, the Tigers have been cursed by the baseball god. They dropped a pop fly behind a pop foul ball behind the plate yesterday, which ended up with 2 more runs. Now, the Guards won 5-1. But I don't know how they ever win again. It's like shattering the Tigers. They'll probably win the World Series, given how shattered they are right now. They could rebuild. It's possible. Guardians haven't won anything. They're 1 game ahead with 4 games to go, and they're ahead in the wild card. But we will see. Not that I'm excited. Cleveland, Columbus, Toledo. Not that I'm excited, but poor old Detroit, I feel for you. Here's my relief factor. All I can recommend is taking some. By the way, Screwball went to the Cleveland Clinic to see David Fry. Classy guy, Detroit. Very, very classy guy. And David Fry is going to need a lot of relief factor. Actually, he broke a lot of bones in his face. He took a 99.5 mile per hour ball to the face, squared up the bunt, and a fastball rose. And Screwball can throw the ball. And Scuba was very upset. Good guy, went to the clinic. Fry's been released. He's out for the year, 6 to 8 weeks to recover. Probably can't move very much. No surgery, though. Relief factor. You know, I did not go out and do anything today because I would have needed a boat. But if I had, relief factor would have kept me going. Doesn't help you when you take a 99-mile-per-hour fastball in the face, but does help you if you run around the bases like Jose does. Hosey. The crowd was amazing last night. And I'm staying up way too late listening to this stuff and listening to the post game. Hammy's the best announcer in baseball, Tom Hamilton. He's in the Hall of Fame for a reason. Herb scored before him. I mean, Cleveland's been blessed with announcers. They just haven't had that great. The 90s were great, and the last 15 years have been great, but this is the greatest comeback in the history of Divisional League baseball. They were 15 and a half behind the Tigers. They're 1 and up now, right now, with 4 games to go. But I digress. Relief factor. 1-800, the number 4 and the word relief. 1-800, the number 4 and the word relief. Get on the relief factor train, and you'll thank me for it. $19.95 for the starter pack, or go to their website, relieffactor.com. Relieffactor.com. Don't put up with minor aches and pains anymore. And then finally, let me tell you about the American Exploration and Production Council, axpc.org. axpc.org. I was talking with permitting with the EPA earlier, and I think Lee Zeldin's doing a great job on permitting. But there's a lot of permitting involved in pipelines and oil exploration and oil production and all this. And axpc.org, the American Exploration and Production Council, I had their executive director on yesterday, their president. They're going after some amendments to NEPA to cut down on nonsense lawsuits. No one thought that the statute would be so abused this way going into the future. But the American Exploration and Production Council has a blueprint for Congress to fix this broken system. Common sense reform, cutting bureaucracy, not environmental safeguards. Here is the reality. Americans need American oil and natural gas because energy is freedom. If we fall behind, we're not going to catch up. All right? We're just not. We need permitting reform. We need it now. Finally, I got to look at the markets and tell you about where the 10-year is as the markets come up at the close. 4.169. It's a little bit above last week, but that doesn't mean you should call andrewandtodd.com. You should call andrewandtodd.com. 888-1172. Mortgage rates have dropped over the last 6 months. Last week they were the lowest they have. Maybe they took up an eighth of a point. It doesn't matter. What matters is you do the math with Andrew Del Rey or Todd Avakian or someone in their office. 888-1172. And the reason is how the GDP got revised upward to 4.8% in the last quarter. We had just a bang out quarter. A lot of that is CapEx spending by AI. John Ellis on this program, the editor-in-chief of News Items, they follow the CapEx on AI, and it's so massive, it's a private stimulus bill. It's billions and billions and billions, and so the economy is growing, which means people are moving, and they got to buy houses. 6% is not bad for a 30-year fixed. I had 12.5% for my first house. It's not the 3% your brother-in-law has. Tell him to pound sand. You're going to go get the house you want. And you're going to pay a little bit more. Most importantly, if you have to consolidate debt, refi. Half of the mortgages being done in the United States right now, half, maybe it's 48%, maybe it's 52%, but half are done to consolidate debt. Because during the Biden years, when prices were going up, people kept putting stuff on their credit card. Credit cards, 14%, 16%, 20%. You might have a 3% mortgage, but it might make all the sense in the world for you to take your credit card debt, your car debt, roll it into your home debt, and refinance. Do that at 888-1172. Or go to their website, andrewandtodd.com. Now, I've told you this for years and years. Andrew's been my friend for 25 years. We're in a Bible study together. They may have thrown me out this week because I've missed 3 weeks in a row. Dennis, let me know. Andrew, let me know. But I'll be back. Rick, praying for you. But Andrew and I talk offline about business. Business is booming. People are calling. You get a lot of, you'll start hearing from mortgage brokers who are popping up all over the place. Don't go with a newbie. Go with andrewandtodd.com. They're with Sierra Pacific Mortgage. They are lenders, soup to nuts. They lend you the money. They underwrite the loan. They help you fix your credit. Whether you're a veteran and you're buying you don't want to put anything down, you're a first-time home buyer, you want FHA, or you're a senior citizen and you want a reverse mortgage, you don't want to make another mortgage payment ever, but you want money out of your house, Andrew and Todd with 2Ds.com, or call 888-888-1172, 888-888-1172. After the Guardians had beaten the Tigers last night, I almost went to bed, but then I saw Governor Glenn Youngkin of Virginia had gone to Virginia Tech with the great Megyn Kelly to do a rally for TPUSA. It's only 25 minutes. Go find it. It's on my X account. Here's a little bit of what Governor Youngkin said. Cut number 6.
2 weeks and a day ago. 2 weeks and a day ago, where were we? We were worried about lots of things, not what tonight was going to be like. To be candid, what I was worried about 2 weeks and a day ago was moving schedule around, because Charlie had been incredibly gracious and invited me to come to Blacksburg and be part of this event. That's what I was worried about. I talked to Megyn Kelly yesterday, and she was working on her logistics as well. The team was working on how to pull this event off. I'm sure all of you were focused on school. It was a different time. It was a different moment. 2 weeks ago, it all changed.
Cut number 7.
See, early in the morning, on September the 10th, Charlie did his last podcast. He did a podcast. He had done them more frequently than any of us can possibly imagine. He had engaged in conversation all over the world. And that morning, he was engaging in another podcast. And that podcast would end up being his very last one.
Cut number 8.
At the end of the podcast, the interviewer asked him one question. Hey, are there any phrases or sayings that you like to live your life by? And he said, well, there's 2. The first is, this too shall pass. What a comment. This too shall pass. It's just a saying. It's a saying that when things are really good, be humble. And particularly when things are really bad, have faith. This too will pass.
It's a fabulous set of remarks delivered without notes by a great governor. He's my governor, frequent guest on this program. And in the rest of the show, I'll find a chance to play for you his closing prayer. It's really a testimony. Again, I remind everyone, when you think things are going to hell, it's time to go to church. And Glenn Youngkin talks about his own faith journey. He's a Christian, very outspoken evangelical, but he wasn't when he met Suzanne. And he started to get smart, and he's a very smart guy, and he realized that the Gospels are self-obviously true. And he became one, and he gave his life to Christ, and he gave that testimony last night. And I thought, this is really just the first knock on after Charlie's murder. I closed last hour, if you were listening, by playing part of Glenn Youngkin's speech the Virginia governor addressed the first Turning Point USA rally since Charlie's assassination last night at Virginia Tech. Megyn Kelly headlined with Glenn Youngkin, and it's fabulous. And I'll get to it after I talk with Senator Tom Cotton. Senator Cotton, welcome. How are you?
I'm doing well, Hugh. I apologize for being a little bit late. I'm still trying to figure out the math on how the Guardians have won every game for the last 6 weeks while building a lineup that bats .220.
My theory is that the baseball gods took a look at what the football gods had done to Cleveland for the last 26 years, and they're just going to make it happen. No matter the emotional damage done to the time. Yeah, it's the only way. No other explanation. Senator, I want to talk about very serious stuff. I talked about with Noah Rothman earlier, political violence. Because you were the first guy to peg the origin of the COVID virus in the Wuhan lab, I'm going to look for the origin of the political violence we're going through. But first, I want to categorize it either as left-wing, right-wing, insanity-driven, or Islamist. What do you think about the assassination of Charlie Kirk? Left-wing, right-wing, insanity, or Islamist?
I mean, obvious left-wing violence, the assassination of Charlie Kirk. You had a young man who his own parents had said had political views and moved to the left. The governor of Utah, no partisan gunslinger, had said the same thing, and you can just tell by what he wrote online or even on the bullet casings that he used. That this was a left-wing assailant and a center-right victim who was targeted for his political views.
All right. The assassination attempts, both of them on President Trump.
As far as we know, again, left-wing violence targeting a center-right politician while he was running for office. It seems to be a clear-cut case.
Justice Kavanaugh.
Again, no question, you had a left-wing hitman who flew all the way in from California, who had the tools and the equipment necessary for breaking and entering and kidnapping. Again, in all these cases, they show the kind of malice of forethought and premeditated planning that belie any claims that these were just lunatics or schizophrenics.
Congressional baseball practice where the GOP caucus was assaulted in 2017.
Again, Hugh, a Bernie Sanders supporter who intentionally planned and sought out a site where you would have multiple Republican elected officials. And thankfully, Hugh, Steve Scalise at the time, who was in the elected leadership of the House and therefore had a security detail, you had Capitol Police officers who bravely neutralized that threat. Just imagine what it would have been like in 2017 if they hadn't had that Capitol Police security detail there by happenstance.
How about the murderous attacks on the religious schools, Catholic in Minneapolis, evangelical in Nashville?
Hugh, from everything we can tell, they seem to be left-wing ideological violence by self-identified transgendered person against Bible-believing Christians. I think in those cases, maybe that had some kind of affiliations with the school.
We've got some 3 attacks on ICE facilities, the most recent being yesterday. Do you have opinions on all or any of them?
Hugh, I haven't seen the latest reporting on them. I know the one in Dallas, there were shell casings found that were specifically targeting with anti-ICE messaging. And just generally speaking, I mean, why would anyone be targeting an ICE facility if they weren't ideologically opposed from the left to immigration enforcement?
I agree. The shooting into the ABC studio in Sacramento following the cancellation of Jimmy Kimmel.
Don't have enough information on that one, Hugh.
It's pretty easy. He was a left-wing advocate for the California Teachers Association. When you dig in, you'll find he's a very, very political person. I am a little confused on the country club shooting in New Hampshire because the details are foggy. Do you have better information than I do on that one?
No, Hugh, not enough information, no.
And there was an attempted bombing of a Fox News van, which I have no idea. Do you have any better information on that?
I don't know, Hugh. And I do think, like, the fact that you and I both are saying that on some of these cases we simply don't know enough information, it is important in any of these moments not to jump to conclusions and wait until all the facts are ascertained. But once we know the facts, I think it's important to call these acts of violence what they are.
Now, I'm going to stipulate the 1-6 riot is right-wing violence. The attempt to kidnap Governor Whitmer, a Democrat in Michigan, is right-wing violence. They're not Republicans and they're not mainstream. They're radical right and racist in some cases. The murder of the Hartmans in Minnesota appears to be mental illness, although it was presented as right-wing violence, but that guy is not dealing with a full deck.
Yeah.
How do you go ahead?
Yeah.
And how do you categorize the riots after George Floyd's death?
Well, those were explicitly left-wing activists who are rioting and burning down American cities over supposed social justice claims. But Hugh, if I could go back to the ones you kind of moved through quickly, the riot on January 6th was bad, but you had a large rally, a massive rally, in which a small minority got caught up in the spirit of the mob, which is a bad thing. That's why you should avoid the mob spirit. And a minority of those committed acts of violence. But again, that is different, being caught up in a mob spirit in the moment than deliberately and with premeditation planning the murder of a president. or a conservative activist or a Supreme Court justice. Even Hugh, in Michigan, you had a bunch of guys who actually were not planning, as far as we could tell, from taking any kind of action, who were entreated by FBI informants to engage in a conspiracy against the governor of Michigan. There were no overt actions taken. That's why they were brought up on conspiracy charges, which again is different from what it appears happened in Utah, the deliberate, premeditated, planned assassination of a center-right public figure.
Now, the Antifa violence that has racked Portland, Seattle, President Trump's first inauguration, that's all left-wing anarchist violence. And it's not even worth debating, right? It's just left-wing anarchist violence.
Not, obviously, yeah.
So with all those things, number one, have you seen any major news media attempt to categorize and explain the cycle of violence that we're in?
Well, I mean, most of the mainstream media, which is, say, the liberal media, wants to equivocate and say, oh, this is a both sides problem, when, as we've just demonstrated, it really isn't a both sides problem. One that we missed, Hugh, was the arson at the governor's mansion in Pennsylvania.
Oh, you're right.
An awful act of violence against a Democratic governor perpetrated by a left-wing pro-Hamas zealot who thought the Democratic governor of Pennsylvania was too pro-Israel. So yet again, even though it was against a Democratic politician, it's an example of left-wing violence. That's why I say that political violence today in America is almost exclusively left-wing violence.
So now the hard question. You did guess. You reasoned to the Wuhan lab as the origin story before anybody else during COVID. You were first on the record. Maybe one of your first appearances on this show, you put that theory forward. What's the origin story for this cycle of left-wing violence? What is causing it?
Hugh, I haven't been able to pin it down to one thing, and it may not be one thing. I will say, though, that it is a return to a long historical pattern of left-wing violence. This didn't just happen recently. I mean, think about the Weather Underground in the 1960s and the SDS and some of the bombings on campuses, for instance. You could even go, you can go back to the French Revolution, Hugh, and come forward through the Russian Revolution, and there's just a long history of the political left around the world, to include here in America, using violence to obtain their political ends, what they can't obtain through the ballot box.
So is any media organization from the legacy side going to do a deep dive and attempt to categorize and follow? The academic stuff is nonsense. They make up categories that don't exist. And in fact, I'll give you the 5 choices. Almost exclusively left-wing, mostly left-wing, evenly divided, mostly right-wing, almost exclusively right-wing. What are we talking about here?
I'm sorry, Hugh, can you say that again?
Yeah, there are 5 choices. All the political violence since 2016 has been almost exclusively left-wing, mostly left-wing, evenly divided, mostly right-wing, almost exclusively right-wing.
Almost exclusively left-wing, and that's why the liberal media is trying to efface that reality and say this is a both sides problem.
I think you're right. Is anyone going to change that, do you think? We got 30 seconds.
Well, you and I have done what little we can. I think the president is doing what he can as well. That if there are networks of funding and support and training behind these acts of violence, then they need to be held accountable under criminal law.
I hope you are right. Senator Tom Cotton, always a pleasure to talk to you. Go Guards. Hope we meet the Red Sox in the postseason. I'm joined by Jim Garrity of National Review. Jim, earlier today I had on EPA Administrator Lee Zeldin, and he's a good guy, doing a lot of good stuff. They've got, well, according to AI, they've got 17,000 employees. Lee says they've got it down to 16,000. He's heading to 12,500. I asked him if he could get below 10,000, and he kind of waved that off. Russ Vought gets entire authority over the federal government if they shut down. Under the Civil Service Reform Act of 1978, he can do RIFs everywhere. What do you want Russ Vought to do, and do you think the EPA can do it with 10,000 or less?
Well, Lee Zeldin does not strike me as the kind of guy who's going to keep unneeded employees around. I do think this was a major factor in the frustrations of Elon Musk, that he was coming in as Doge wanted to make cuts left and right and found that other people in the Trump administration, now that they were newly in charge of a particular federal department, were not eager to fire lots of people. Like, wait a minute, those are my employees. Wait a minute, I'm supposed to have all these people in order to achieve what my agency is supposed to do. I couldn't give you a number, Hugh. I'd have to look at the EPA. I feel like it would be kind of arbitrary to pick how many they need. I think Zeldin
It was
is
arbitrary
not,
for me, but I was trying to push on the idea of, are we really down to being skinny? Because I think Vogt, who, by the way, I'm told by John Campbell, his former boss, that Russ Vogt is the smartest guy he ever hired. So he's got an axe and he's got a pencil and he's got a razor blade. I think if Chuck Schumer shuts this government, the federal employee workforce is going to be radically diminished, regardless of what the agency heads think. What do you think?
Earlier today in the corner, I said that the Democrats are marching into a box canyon, and I hope people understand that metaphor. It's not a good thing to do.
No, they don't yet. We don't watch Westerns anymore. Explain.
So, basically you walk into a box canyon and you are surrounded on three sides with elevated position, making it very easy for your opponent to beat the hell out of you. Look, Chuck Schumer, by not forcing a government shutdown fight earlier this year, everybody said he was a wimp. Everybody said he was a noodle-spined squish who wasn't willing to stand up to Trump, etc. And clearly that stings Chuck Schumer. Clearly that, Democrats are running against the current leadership in the Senate primaries that are going, the nascent summer Senate primaries that are going on right now. Nobody likes that. Chuck Schumer does not like to be the punching bag. He does not like to be the piñata. So he wants to show, oh, I'm willing to have a fight. I'll show you that fight. Even though, if you have this fight, lots of federal workers, get sent home, if they're not essential. Those who are essential don't get paid until the government shutdown gets resolved. They do get their back pay. Listeners should not convince themselves that government shutdowns are a good way to save money. But they're going to, at this point, like the longest government shutdown ever was in 2018, 2019, when Trump was like, you know what, fine, I'm not giving up any ground. And, he ended up negotiating with Nancy Pelosi when she was majority leader instead of, or when the Democrats had a majority instead of when Republicans had a majority. So Trump don't get into a game of chicken with Trump. He's perfectly happy to keep the government shut down as long as it takes. And government employees are generally Democrats. Oh, by the way, Hugh, which state am I in right now that has a gubernatorial
Virginia.
Race, right? If you're Abigail Spanberger, which one? Spanberger's ahead right now.
I looked up. Who is?
Abigail Spanberger is ahead in the polling. But I think a government shutdown that would start on October 1st and continue, God knows when, conceivably all the way through Election Day, at a time when Senate Democrats would be the ones saying, no, we're not going to stop filibustering a spending bill. I don't know if that could cost her the gubernatorial election. It just becomes a new giant X factor. And I figure if you're Spanberger, you don't want that. You don't want this new other factor that could, have a whole bunch of Northern Virginia government employees irritated with Chuck Schumer and Senate Democrats. So I'm not going to say, oh, the government's going to shut down. This is going to make Winsome Earl Sears the governor. I just think it's a new unknown into this that if I'm Spanberger, I'd rather not have.
I want to go back to Spanberger and Winsome Sears in just a second, but I went and looked up the rules on RIFs, reduction in forces. An employee must receive a notice 60 days before they're fired forever. So I think Vogt's going to send the notice on day one, and I think Trump's going to wait for 61 days, fire everyone, and then, or start to fire people, and see what happens to Schumer when he crumbles, because he's going to lose this fight. I don't think there's any way he can win.
Well, I was going to say, one of the other big problems here is, what would Democrats be able to get as a concession from Trump that would make them feel like, yes, we won this fight? I know they want 1.5 trillion in spending, and they're not going to get that, right? But basically, to the typical grassroots Democrat, the problem is not just ICE enforcement or just spending issues or just foreign policy or, their ultimate problem is that they don't think Trump should be president. Well, guess what? That's going to be the case, barring some tragedy. He's going to be president until January 20th, 2029. So whatever they get, they're going to say Schumer should have gotten more. So there is no outcome to this government shutdown fight that makes lots of Democrats in the grassroots say, wow, heck of a job, Chuck Schumer. We're really proud of you.
All right, now I want to switch subjects to the murders in Dallas yesterday after the assassination of Charlie, after all the other political violence. Has any legacy media outlet, to your knowledge, done an attempt to categorize incidents of political violence, get rid of the stuff that's not political violence, which is schizophrenia or other mental disease, and categorize them by left-right ideology? Has anyone done the work?
No, and I have two problems. One is that I still see people referring to the assassination of the Minnesota state lawmakers, or the one assassinated, one attempted assassinated, as a right-wing violence. And this guy believed that Tim Walz had told him to do it because Tim Walz, wanted to be a senator. I think that guy is better characterized as a garden variety nut with all kinds of crazy conspiracy theories than a
Correct.
right-wing figure, right? That's problem number one.
He had done some
Problem
pro-life speaking in Africa, which is why we get he's a pro-life absolutist, but in fact, he's a nut.
Yeah. Hugh, I am struck by the people who believe that his statement to the police should not count as his motive when he's telling them that. Similarly, I was kind of struck by the New Hampshire Attorney General saying that the gunman who shot up the country club allegedly had shouted "Free Palestine," and they said that they did not believe that was a factor in the shooting. Now, maybe this guy was a disgruntled employee. It's just weird to see law enforcement saying, don't pay attention to what the guy was shouting while he was shooting people. The second case is I've seen a chart from The Economist that is measuring events, not number of people hurt or killed by different forms of political violence. And one of the first thing that jumps out at you on this chart, which goes back to the 1990s, is it would have you believe that in the year 2001, there was only one mass casualty event driven by extremism, and it was right-wing extremism. Now, Hugh, I know, I seem to remember something back in like September 2001.
Yeah, it was on the air 8
deal.
hours that day. Okay, so we're not going to trust The Economist to do this. Maybe National Review's Morning Jolt will do it. Maybe the Washington Post, where Jim has a column, will do it. Maybe the 3-martini lunch will. Maybe it'll be a 6-martini lunch, and you can march through them. Kavanaugh, softball, field shooting, 2 on Trump. Maybe Jim Garrity will do it. Thank you, Jim. Follow him on X at Jim Garrity. David Drucker is cued by that music, longtime reporter for The Dispatch and many other people in D.C. David, this is a vibe question. After the murder of Charlie Kirk, and after the attack on ICE yesterday, and after all the other political violence to assassination attempts on the president, the assassination attempt on Kavanaugh, I got a long list. What's the vibe around D.C. about personal safety?
Well, it's a little bit hard to tell because Congress is on recess, and they've been out this week, and they'll be out again next week, at least the House will. But there was already concerns that members of Congress were expressing immediately after Charlie Kirk was assassinated about their safety. Politicians in both parties were rethinking public events. There was a Democrat, and I'm forgetting his name right now, that actually canceled an event, a public event, while he rethought how he wanted to handle it. And so I think this is something where you're going to see Congress debate and possibly consider spending more money for member security, which has actually been a concern for quite some time. I mean, it predates the Biden administration even, but it's getting fresh attention now.
I think it goes back to the 2017 attack on the GOP congressional baseball game, doesn't it?
Yeah, that was, of course, where Steve Scalise and other Republican members of Congress were practicing on a field in suburban Washington across the river in Virginia for the game. And the guy who tried to take them out figured out where they were practicing and was hiding behind some fencing and started and opened fire. And if not for the fact that Steve Scalise was a part of that practice, they might have all been killed because he had protective detail because he's a member of leadership. And I don't know if people understand that, at least post 9/11, if you're an elected member of the House or Senate leadership, both parties, minority, majority, whatever, you have plain clothes detail that goes with you everywhere you go, home, around the country, political work, legislative work, all over Capitol Hill, through the building. They're armed, they're trained, and that's what saved everybody's life that day.
So, David, is there any appetite? Chip Roy put out a text today, or an X post, that they want a permanent committee on violence in America. I don't think that's going to fly, but I do think a select commission might fly into this explosion of violence. I've gone through it with Senator Cotton. I've gone through it with Noah Rothman. It's overwhelmingly left wing. I'm not sure the Democrats want to get into it, but do you think there's an appetite to try and figure out what has happened here? Because this is different than the last 30 years.
Yeah, look, I mean, I think these things are effective if they're narrowly tailored, right? I agree with you. There's just something on the explosion of violence. I mean, I don't know what you do with that. But if you want to look specifically at political violence, or specifically at political violence targeting lawmakers, and there I think you could see an appetite from Democrats, right? I mean, Josh Shapiro, the governor of Pennsylvania, was targeted. A Minnesota lawmaker, Democrat, was assassinated. There would have been a second assassination of a Democrat in Minnesota, but he survived. And so even though lately this has been left-wing violence directed at Republicans or people identified with Republicans, this has been a both sides problem, or at least politicians in both parties have been targeted. And so I think there might be an appetite for something like that, particularly if it's going to be productive. I mean, it could be the kind of thing we saw with the Select Committee on China, right? The parties have disagreements, to say the least. Everybody agrees something needs to be done about China, even if they think it's different things, and they were able to get together and actually be pretty productive.
There was also a cyber solarium, which was a joint committee between the House and the Senate. Angus King, Mike Gallagher, they got together as sort of a forerunner on the Select Committee on China. That the House Speaker can do that, but to get a 9/11 style commission on, I actually phrase it, what has the internet done to young men, plus COVID? That's really my question, because if you look at the killers, overwhelmingly they're young white men between the ages of 18 and 30.
Yeah, and I think, look, it's something that I don't fully understand because of my age, right? But I mean, it's not, we think of social media platforms, but there are all sorts of, there's gaming and things like Discord and Reddit. And I don't mean, you've got to get somebody on the show, Hugh, younger than me, to explain all the rabbit holes in which young people can go down. And COVID definitely had an impact on the psyche of young men, and this is something that needs a lot more exploration by policymakers.
The killer in Dallas, we're learning he's a lefty. He spent thousands and thousands and thousands of hours gaming. I can't imagine anyone doing that. Life's too interesting, but apparently not. David M. Drucker on X, chief political correspondent for the Dispatch. Thank you, David. Josh Kroshauer, chief editor of the Jewish Insider and longtime Beltway reporter. I want to dig into some tall weeds, Josh. The government shutdown is going to come. That authorizes the director of OMB, Russ Vought, to reduce the size of the government because it's crisis. The Civil Service Reform Act provides for RIFs after 60-day notice. I began the show with Lee Zeldin. He said they're right-sizing the agency down. They started below 17,000. They're going to get to 12,500. I said, I think Russ Vought's going to take you below 10 or lower. What do you think's going to happen if the Schumer shutdown happens? You think Russ Vought's going to sit around and smoke cigars and do nothing?
So number one, knowing Russ Vought a little bit, his whole mission is to cut the size and scope of government. So if the government does shut down, I would expect many federal agencies to prepare for widespread layoffs and use every tool in the toolbox they can to cut and trim the size of government. Number two, look, Hugh, there was a reason that Chuck Schumer, when he had the opportunity earlier this year, chose not to go maximalist and chose not to shut the government down and play hardball with the Trump administration, even though there were a lot of members in his own party that were calling for that. He knows that this is sort of the end game. This is if you play this out, that the White House holds all the leverage, or most of the leverage. And usually this is the history of shutdowns, by the way, Republican and Democrat alike. The party in power, or sorry, the party that initiates the shutdown, the party that essentially holds the government hostage, in this case it would be the Democrats, would shoulder a significant share of the blame politically. So that's why Schumer didn't want to go through with it the first time. The base of the Democratic Party is a lot stronger right now, and I think he's feeling pressure from that progressive base.
So you can write down my prediction. Schumer's going to shut it down. Russ Vought's going to send the 60-day letter to 2 million federal employees. They're going to realize, and the Democrats are going to try and walk it back and vote, and then the Republicans won't let them do that. They're going to reduce the size of the government dramatically, and they're going to blame Schumer for it. That's what I think's going to... You think they thought this through? It's the dumbest thing I think I've ever seen the Democrats do, politically.
Well, I also, one mantra that I kind of live by in terms of assessing politics is the party that's united usually is the party that's winning. We already have one Democratic defector in the Senate, in John Fetterman, who went on Fox last week, and I think he said so for quite some time, but he's not going to support a shutdown. It doesn't get Trump the 60 votes that he needs, but it certainly at least it gives you one prominent Democratic voice that's not with Chuck Schumer. And there's going to be pressure on a handful of other purple state and competitive state Democrats because I don't think this is going to be popular. It's going to be a pox on both houses, and I think Democrats have more to lose.
Now, you know, when President Obama ran one of these, he shut down the Washington Monument. They actually shut down, it's hard to believe, they shut down Mount Rushmore. They closed the road so you couldn't see Mount Rushmore. You couldn't even pull off the street and look at Mount Rushmore. They made it as uncomfortable for the average American as possible without cutting off Social Security, Medicaid, which are entitlements. Those don't stop. That'll be the opposite here. Trump will make it as and vote will make it as uncomfortable for the permanent government as possible. And they'll be very good at it, Josh. Do you think they'll be good at it?
Well, we already got a little bit of a preview. I mean, with looking at the scope of the Doge cuts earlier in the year, plus the very hysterical reaction. And if you actually look at polling, not saying that the cuts were all popular, but I don't think a lot of people in their day-to-day lives have really experienced, if you work for the federal government, that's the exception. If you live in D.C. or in the metropolitan D.C. area, that's the one exception. But across most of the country, the cuts were not really seen or felt in any real politically meaningful way. I think the shutdown this time, any potential cuts this go around would probably be even less significant. And look, I think, like you said, Hugh, the goal of the White House would probably be showing that the government can run on a smaller staff and can handle things, with things going normal. I
think Chuck Schumer is Wile E. Coyote in the Senate, and we will see. Now I want to turn to something serious. Lots of violence in America, including yesterday's attack in Dallas, the assassination of Charlie, 2 attempts on President Trump, 1 attempt on Kavanaugh, the softball shooting, the attacks on schools in Minneapolis and Nashville. A lot of political violence. I haven't gone through it all. There's January 6th, obviously, the Whitmer as well. Israelis are used to terrorism. Not used to it, but it happens. Do you think Americans are going to get used to this, or are they going to say, what the heck is going on here, and demand action?
Boy, that's a big question. I mean, look, America, we're a much bigger country than Israel. We also have a very high rate of violence historically. The political violence element is what's new and disturbing. The thing that scares me the most, to be honest, Hugh, is the fact that you see in some of these recent episodes, I think including the ICE shooter in Dallas, the degree of time they spend online and in radical spaces online, how quickly you can go from 0 to 100 on the radicalization, extremism, crazy scale just by spending time in some of these extreme online communities. And we've seen this not in every case, but a lot of the commonality between some of the most recent shooters, like the Minnesota Catholic school shooting, certainly the Charlie Kirk assassination. These young kids get radicalized online. They adopt a whole slew of crazy beliefs and commit, and they almost live in an online world. It's like they're living in a fantasy world. I think that's very scary. I love the other thing you don't see in a lot of these most recent cases is any connection to an organized network. If these are lone wolves, these are individuals that do, basically it would be like having like someone, following Osama bin Laden online and becoming Al Qaeda. And we did see some isolated episodes of that in the post 9/11 period, but nothing widespread. I worry that we are seeing sort of a degree of political radicalization being driven by a lot of these social media platforms that aren't really taking accountability for their own actions.
Now, I'm going to use a term, metastatic political violence. Do you think that's what we're in?
Meaning
It's
what?
spreading everywhere.
Right. I worry. I mean, I do worry. The pessimistic part of me does worry, but that when you have there's always a tipping point when things start to go off the rails. They can often go off. We saw this in the late 60s, and it didn't end until shortly after Ronald Reagan's assassination attempt. I worry that we are kind of in another period like that, but I don't think we're there yet. And it takes leadership. It takes sane voices on both sides of the political aisle to speak up against political violence.
Joshua Crosshour, happy beginning of your new year and a blessed Yom Kippur. Before I talk to you next, thank you for joining me. You can read Josh at Jewish Insider. You can follow him on X at Josh Crosshour. I want to tell you about Consumer Cellular. I'm doing it every hour this day because I want to make sure every single person in my audience who wants to save money, and especially if you're 50 and older, know that you can do that with our sponsor, Consumer Cellular. You go to consumercellular.com/Hugh, or you call Consumer Cellular at 1-800-411-4454. And remember my code, Hugh25. But the phone number is 1-800-411-4454. 1-800-411-4454. You can have savings without sacrificing great cell coverage, and you don't have to take a lot of time to do this. Less than 20 minutes. You can keep your number, you can keep your device, or you can get new number, new device. Keep all your data, keep your contacts. Just lower the cost by a lot. Now, some people out there need unlimited data. I'm one of them because it's my job to be online a lot. Plus, I go through periods of time like the last 2 weeks where I'm listening to the Guardians game all night long on WTAM 1100 over the web. That takes data. But most people over the age of 50, and that includes me, I don't watch movies on my phone. I don't play games on my phone. The people who use a lot of data are the gamers. If you're not a gamer, you really don't need that much data. But find out. Get your phone bill, get it in front of you, and then you call 1-800-411-4454. You'll push one button, and then you'll be talking to a real live U.S.-based customer service rep who will walk through with you the different options. All you have to remember is consumercellular.com/Hugh or 1-800-411-4454. 1-800-411-4454. And remember the code Hugh25, which will save you an additional $5 a month for 5 months. That's a special offer. I'm in the Relief Factor studio. Took Relief Factor in the first hour. Did not do a lick of exercise today. Read the new Vince Flynn novel because I'm talking to Don Bentley, the author, next week. Had a great time. It was pouring and it's cold. And you know what? When I was 25, I would go out and run in that stuff. I don't do it anymore. Now I watch it rain. And I don't go to the gym. I don't do anything. Take a day off. Don't feel bad about it. Maybe I only get 20 miles this week. Maybe I'll do better. But whatever I do, Relief Factor will keep me free of the minor aches and pains that come with exercise, whether it's daily or 4 times a week or 5 times a week. You're going to have minor aches and pains, whether you exercise or whether you age. You're actually going to age regardless, and you should be exercising, whether it's swimming or weights or walking or running or trundling or going to the gym, whatever it is. Try Relief Factor. I've taken it for 12 years now. Only supplement I've taken for more than 20 years. Don't expect to take any more. 1-800, the number 4 and the word relief, 1-800-4-RELIEF. The starter pack is $19.95, less than $1 a day. All you have to do is go to relieffactor.com, relieffactor.com. We should send some to the Tigers and all. You know, I don't want to lose my audience on 92.7 WDTK, The Answer in Detroit. I love you folks. I'm sorry about your Tigers' epic collapse, but it's not over yet. Tune in tonight. They might win. They might be back in a first-place tie, though the Tribe has the tiebreaker. There are 4 games left. Don't give up hope. It's been a very long 2 weeks, 3 weeks actually, since Charlie was murdered, and then yesterday's terrible violence, and there are a lot of people upset and a lot of people asking questions. As I said yesterday, when you think things are going to hell, that's the time to start going to church or go return to church or synagogue or whatever your faith tradition is. And if you don't have a faith tradition, ask a friend. They will take you. Governor Glenn Youngkin, along with Megyn Kelly, headlined the first TPUSA rally since Charlie's assassination, Virginia Tech last night. After the Guardians had beaten the Tigers, I saw a link to it. I said, I'll watch that tomorrow. And then a little voice said, no, watch it tonight. I'm glad I did, because Glenn Youngkin really has the gift. Cut number 9.
His second statement was really important that morning. He said 2 Corinthians 4:17. Romans 8, verse 28. Romans 8, verse 28. And we know that in all things God's work for the good of those who love him, who have been called according to his purpose. I'm going to say that again. As we know that in all things God works for the good of those who loved him, who have been called according to his purpose. Called and according to his purpose. And this too shall pass.
He's right. He's trying to encourage kids. He continued, cut number 10.
That morning, Charlie left us with a blueprint. That morning, he left us with guidelines to once again benefit from a man who spoke truth. He left us again with something to reflect on our own lives. And therefore tonight, we have an opportunity to reflect and we have an opportunity to go.
Go where? Well, go into politics, he's talking about, obviously, but also go to church. Pick one and go. He also talked about leadership among young people. Cut number 11.
I wish Charlie were here tonight. I wish we were engaging in that amazing moment where Charlie speaks truth. There is a dialogue, a respect, a recognition of the beauty of freedom of expression. And we will have that tonight. But I know we all wish Charlie was here. But see, the truth is that the question that has been asked over and over again is, who will be the next Charlie? And as I look out in this room and I see thousands of you, I want to repeat the best answer that I have heard. You will be the next Charlie. All of you. And that is something to take home tonight.
And then Governor Youngkin did two things. First, he prayed and lifted up Erica Kirk, cut number 12.
Now you will have a leader that's extraordinary. A leader that we have all come to know in a very different way than we knew her 2 weeks and a day ago. Over the course of the last 2 weeks, Erica Kirk has demonstrated that she not only has the courage of a lion, but she has the heart of a saint. We have grieved with her and her family. We have prayed for her and her family. And we have stood together for her and her family. And tonight, we see that the next leader of Turning Point is the person who knew Charlie the very best. Someone who looked into his heart. And therefore, is there anyone better to lead Turning Point going forward than Erica Kirk? My friends, I think right now it's a moment to cheer for Erica Kirk.
And they did for a long time. And then Glenn Youngkin closed his remarks with a prayer, cut number 13.
Here comes the hard part. You see, one of the things that I firmly believe in is that prayer is essential, absolutely essential to everything we do. And this is now where it might be a little uncomfortable, but I'm going to ask you to bear with me. In my family, we hold hands when we pray. Now, oftentimes I do this with the big guys on my detail because I like to see them hold hands. We take pictures too. But if you wouldn't mind, just quietly reach over to the person next to you and hold hands. And gather yourself together and join me. Join me in a moment of prayer. Father God, thank you. Thank you for every single person in this room. Father, you say to bring our asks to you. We would ask for some air conditioning. But Father, we know you gathered us here tonight for a reason. And you promise us when 2 or 3 are gathered in your name, you will be among us. And so we invite you. Father, we thank you for Charlie Kirk. We thank you for his life. We thank you for the way that he lived it. We thank you for the way that you inspired him and called him. We thank you for his courage to say, yes, send me. Father, we thank you for your promise is real, that Charlie is with you in your kingdom. And yes, when he arrived, there was a celebration, and you said, well done, good and faithful servant. Father, we pray for Erica and their family. We pray for her first as a mother. We pray for her as Charlie's wife. We pray for you to give her strength to fulfill those essential callings on her. But we also pray, Father, for her new role as leader of Turning Point, that you will provide her the strength, the capabilities, and by the way, the team to do all that you want Turning Point to do. Finally, Father, I ask for your blessing on everyone here. Will you stir in their hearts a moment to examine, a moment to engage, and the strength to endure? Father, will you shine your face upon each and every one, and may they know your peace. And Father, we pray all of this in the mighty name of your Son and our Savior, Jesus Christ. And all God's people say, amen. God bless you all.
Now, if you have never heard anything like that, you have no idea what he's talking about, I understand. I am a very lucky person. My mom was a Roman Catholic, and we went to church every week, and my dad was a Presbyterian. I was exposed to that tradition, and they respected each other. And I've had great pastors, preachers, and leaders. As a young man, in school, I had Sister Aloysius and a bunch of Notre Dame nuns and Sisters of St. Mary's, and I had great priests throughout my whole life. Father Claude, maybe the best homilist ever that I heard. I got Father Steve right now, Father Peter. Archbishop Chaput is a great friend. His book, Things Worth Dying For, is appropriate right now for people if you haven't read that. I've been blessed by great Catholic preaching. My first Presbyterian preacher was Louis Evans, a great, great name in those annals. Followed by Ben Patterson, great, great name. Followed by Mark Roberts. Followed by Pastor Scott and Pastor Larry. I've had great pastors, and I've been able to interview Adine Steinsaltz on this program, a great rabbinic scholar. N.T. Wright. I've been able to immerse myself in Christianity and world religions. But you don't need that. All you need is a friend who goes to church, because it's not about the pastor and it's not about the preaching. It's about the gospel. And if you're Jewish, go to synagogue. Our older brothers are approaching their high holy days. I'll talk with Bethany Mandel about that. It's a good time to go to synagogue if you haven't been in a few years. It's a great time to go this Sunday. And you won't have to hold hands. By the way, the only good thing that came out of COVID is we stopped holding hands during the Our Father in the Catholic Mass. And rarely do we shake hands during the sign of peace. That's the only good thing to come out of COVID. Because I always thought, I'm one of those people that Youngkin loves to make feel uncomfortable. I'm Irish Catholic. I tell people I'm very comfortable being Presbyterian. It's the church in which I'm least likely to be hugged anywhere. Schroeder laughs about that too. But if you don't know anybody, find a Google page for a local church that says community church and go there. But it's best to ask a friend. They'll be delighted to take you, and you don't need to know a thing, and you'll get free coffee and maybe a donut, and you'll get the word. Bethany Mandel joins me. Hi, Bethany. How are you?
I'm good, thank God. How are you?
I'm good. Bethany, I've been explaining to the audience that I've been talking to Christians primarily, but that our older brothers and sisters in the faith, our Jewish friends, have been rocked by Charlie's assassination as much as we have, and it's cumulative. It comes after 2 years of unceasing violence and hatred, physical in the Holy Land, emotional and sometimes physical in the United States. And I'm wondering, what do you expect Yom Kippur to be? I expect lots of newbies to show up at the Christian churches of America this weekend and next. What do you think Yom Kippur is going to be like in your synagogue?
So I'm not sure. I mean, Jews do this really funny thing where you actually need tickets to go to high holiday services because
Not
they want
surprised.
to, yeah, I mean, a couple reasons: security, fundraising, and they also just need to know how many butts are going to fill the seats. They need to know how many seats to put out. I think that Charlie's death hit young people very hard across the spectrum. And I've heard from a lot of folks that, they're finding a renewed interest in God and faith. And I hope that translates to observance and participation in the Jewish community, but I'm not sure. Yom Kippur is a tough one to start on because it's a fast day.
It is, but would you explain to people why it's a fast day? I find it, I've talked to Haviv about it. I learned more about Rosh Hashanah in the most recent Ask Haviv Anything than I've known in my 6 decades. I didn't know anything
Oh,
about Rosh Hashanah. I really didn't. I didn't know about Abraham. I didn't know about any of that stuff.
why haven't you come to our house for a Shabbat dinner yet? When?
Because we haven't been invited, but we'll come.
Okay, let's do it.
I won't be able to eat
Um,
anything, but I'm a
why not?
picky eater.
We'll figure it out.
You guys eat lots of gefilte fish. I won't eat that stuff.
No,
But
God,
go
no,
on.
no, no, no.
Oh,
There's only good food in my house. Don't worry, none of
great.
that. So Yom Kippur. So you're atoning for your sins, and so you're sort of trying to leave the worldly interests aside for the day. So you're not only not eating and drinking for 25 hours, you're not wearing leather, you're not partaking in marital relations. I know people are in their cars with their kids on the way home, but you're
Right.
really focusing on atoning for your sins. That's the entire focus of the day. And so it doesn't even necessarily have to be at synagogue. You just sort of have to focus on your relationship with God and trying to make your next year's version of yourself the best that it can possibly be.
Is there a double movie running in your head? Because I looked at the Times of Israel. A young, looks to be an Ethiopian Jew, murdered
Yeah.
by Hamas terrorists by a sniper. And, he's younger than Charlie. And every day brings another 3 or 4 deaths. And the Hamas propagandists would say, oh, they killed 5,000 people today. Give up the hostages and go away, and the war will be over. That's my aside. But the grief that people are carrying in the Jewish community is like, add all the Charlie in and a lot more. Do you think that's
Yeah,
noted by the American media?
no, it's for sure not noted in the American media, but it's inescapable in Israel. Everywhere you go, there are bumper stickers with the names and faces of soldiers who have passed away. And so often after someone will pass away, they'll put the photo of the soldier on a bumper sticker, and then a lesson that the family want you to sort of take from his death and something about the soldier. And so those bumper stickers are plastered everywhere, all across Israel. You go to a bus stop, you go anywhere, there's just bumper stickers all over the place. And unfortunately, the ubiquity of them has just become more and more because so many soldiers have died over the course of the war for the last 2 years. And it's funny, Megyn Kelly was at UVA and she was asked pretty explicitly about her support for Israel. And I liked her answer. I was reassured by her answer. But she said, it's time to wrap it up. And I kind of laughed to myself thinking, who wants to wrap it up more than anyone I know? All of my Israeli friends who have been serving in the reserves. They too would like this war to wrap up.
And I think of the sorrow in Ukraine and among Russian families who don't want anything to do with this, and 1.5 million people. C.S. Lewis, great Christian writer, said, if you could see grief, if grief had a color, it would be black, and if you could see the globe, it would be wrapped in black, if you could see grief. But it would be deepest over Ukraine and Israel and Gaza. And in the United States, we've been shocked. But what do you think comes out of it? Do you think people turn to God?
I mean, I hope so. I've seen a lot of friends in Israel step back from observance, honestly, because it has just become too much for them. But I think a lot of that is also, it's just become so difficult to be observant, especially if you're in the reserves, that they've just sort of stepped back from observance from more perhaps of a, I can't think of the right word, from a perspective of they can't, it's hard to serve when you're observing Shabbat. But I hope that people come back to God. I mean, I think that's the ultimate, lesson here, is that we have to sort of give ourselves to God, and that God has a plan.
Now, I have a very difficult, you run the momwars.substack.com. Every mom should read it. What are you talking to moms about these very public, the murder videos of Charlie, the shootings in Dallas? It's just it's ubiquitous. What do you do about your kids?
So you have to hide them. You cannot let them have internet access in their hands. A young child, and I'm talking 14, 15 and under, should not have a smartphone. They should not have the ability to see those videos. But I ran on our Substack this week a really interesting essay from a mother and a teacher at a Christian school who said, I wrote about how we need to raise young boys into men, and vice versa with young ladies into women, and that we need to parent as a verb. We need to proactively parent, because I don't think that that's what happened in the house of this shooter. And this mom, who is a Christian teacher and mother in a very Christian community, said, I was so blown away by your essay, because the submissiveness that I see in our community is so pervasive. Parents are not actively parenting. They're not taking charge of their children. And it shows in their behavior, and it shows in their morals. And there's a real crisis even within the most religious households.
And boys really need men to be men, and the best sort of men. Last question. Did you watch Erica Kirk?
I did. Unbelievable. She should have been the last speech. I was blown away by her.
I was too. I can't believe she did it. By that, I mean publicly forgives. I don't know that I have that capacity. Do you have that capacity, Bethany?
No, I would sound much more like Stephen Miller.
That's the angry.
She reminded me of Mary Catherine Ham. That anniversary of Mary Catherine's husband's death was 10 years ago, and very few people remember it or know it, but right after Jake died, I'm saying 3 days later, she was at his workplace giving his coworkers a pep talk, and she gave a speech if you look it up on YouTube. And she was joking, she was making people smile. That inner strength is something that you only get from God.
Amen. Bethany, a blessed Yom Kippur to you and to Seth and your family. We will talk again next week, and hopefully things will be better. I want to give you my phone number here. I got time for 5 calls. If you all want to be Guardians fans and call, that's fine. 1-800-520-1234. What do you think after these 2 weeks? 1-800-520-1234. Pretty open question. First-time callers only. 1-800-520-1234. While we wait, I want to tell you about Consumer Cellular, our fabulous sponsor, because I want you to save money. Consumer Cellular, you can have savings without sacrifice of your cellular quality. Great network, same crystal clear cell. Keep your phone, keep your number, keep your contact, keep your data, or change it all. Mostly, you want to save money. That's why you call Consumer Cellular. 1-800-411-4454. 1-800-411-4454. One last time, 1-800-411-4454. They serve everyone. But their primary demo is 50 and older. because they know people who are 50 and over are usually paying way too much for cell phone service because they don't need unlimited data plans. Now, they do have an unlimited data plan that's just perfect for 50 and older. 2 lines for $60 a month, unlimited data on both lines. You can't beat that. But you might only need 5 gigs or 10 gigs. Get your phone bill out, have it ready, and remember my code, Hugh25. Whether you call 1-800-411-4454, say Hugh25, and you'll get $5 off each of your next 5 monthly bills. Or if you go to consumercellular.com/Hugh, they'll ask you for a promotion code. Remember, Hugh25. Get the savings, keep the service. consumercellular.com/Hugh. Rob in West Stepford, New Jersey. Hi, Rob.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you. Great to talk to you. I just think, and I wish people like you could say more about it on the air, because I'm sure you agree that if they shut the government down, they shouldn't be paid. And with them getting paid, there's no incentive for them not to shut it down. And it's the most corrupt thing I think I've ever heard of, getting paid.
Well, you know, it's not up to the employees when they get shut out. And a lot of people don't want to stop working. Chuck Schumer just wants to have a stunt. So I'm not sure I agree with you on that, Rob, but I appreciate the call. Cheryl in Washington State, way on the side of the country. Hi, Cheryl.
Hi. I usually chicken out and hang up.
Oh, don't.
On the air.
Me? You get chicken out with me. I'm
know,
like the
you're
least
awesome.
threatening host ever.
I so enjoy listening to you, I have to say. So, in reflection or comment about the last 2 weeks, and the whole Charlie Kirk thing knocks me down hard, and I'm your age. So, you know, I wasn't part of that whole young outreach part, but I've just always been so amazed at what he does and says, and he was a great guy. And it hit me hard. We went to the memorial. It was amazing. But what I want to say, and I've sent several letters to anybody I can in the TPUSA, is that I just don't love seeing all these older Fox News related people taking over Charlie's mission.
It can't be done.
Now,
That'd be crazy. It'd be
What?
like me trying to go on a college campus. You can't do it.
Well, that's what they're doing. They had Burgum, right, the Virginia governor, go to Virginia Tech.
Oh, because he was asked by Erica. Erica asked him to be a guest speaker.
I get that, but Erica's the news, CEO.
He's not
and
taking it
that's
over, though.
why-
I want to make sure you understand that.
No. I know, but they have a whole list. Megyn Kelly's going to go. Tucker Carlson's going to go. No kids, except for the one that was Brennan.
Well, now I want to correct you on this. That TPUSA has invited every one of them in order to make sure that they have attendance and security and big names. They're not taking over TPUSA. They're doing a service. They're being asked to do that.
And I get that, but that wasn't Charlie's footprint. And he
No, I mean Charlie had
very,
and they will move back to it. I guarantee you,
Well, I
Cheryl.
hope so.
They have to. It's not about 50 and older. It's about 30 and younger. And you can't switch out. Thank you, Cheryl. Jeff in Sacramento, you got 30 seconds, Jeff.
Okay, just my main thing is, hey, I was under two of the pastors that you were under, Louis Evans and Ben Patterson. Yeah, so
I've been lucky. You've been lucky.
Yeah. So the comment is just this fact of this assassination for somebody exercising free speech in a country that's supposed to provide free speech. That's still just as a stunner for me. And if that doesn't change my outlook and everybody else's outlook, I don't know what will. I'm different from I was before September 10th. It's a different time.
It's an alarm bell in the night. Heed it. Thank you, Jeff. Jim Talent was the senator from Missouri. He's now on the Executive Leadership Council of the Reagan Foundation. Jim, Senator Cotton was on earlier, as was Noah Rothman. We went through every one of the examples. I forgot Brian Thompson, the healthcare executive who gunned down in New York City in December of 2024. Conclusion from both: overwhelmingly left-wing political violence. Why won't the media cover it that way, Jim?
Because it's left-wing. I mean, that's why. So in the last, I heard that list you gave I think most of those were individual shooters. They probably were radicalized by the discourse online politically, but my own concern, my bigger concern is the organized groups like Antifa. I want to know who's funding them. You know, virtually every night they surround and attack the ICE facility in Portland. And they do this in other cities as well. And I'm sure that they are a particular subject of Kash Patel's attention, and they ought to be. That's the
Well,
organization.
do you remember
I think we should
COINTELPRO? COINTELPRO was the attempt to get into the weather underground, and it ended up springing Bill
Yeah.
Ayers, who was guilty, I think, of murder. That's my opinion. But he got off because the FBI blew it. Do you think they'll be careful about the investigation?
Yeah, they've got to be. And because there is a tension between doing this and civil liberty, so it has to be done right. But then this is an opportunity for the Bureau to rehabilitate its reputation by doing what it's supposed to do, which is stopping, in particular, organized, in this case, politicized, but organized violence in the United States. I mean, it gets me so angry when I see these riots, and I know that there are organized funders behind it. You've seen it, you. I mean,
Oh,
they
of
get
course.
all the
I don't know why
all the
everyone
support-
isn't swept up and arrested. I have never understood it, but the Portland authorities want no part of it.
They have like a logistical chain. I mean, they have a supply lines. It's like a terrorist army that they have. And again, it's what the Bureau is supposed to go after. I know you want the Congress to investigate it, and I think that's a pretty good idea as well, although I don't see why Jim Jordan can't do it in the Judiciary Committee. He's good at it. He's got the staff there. They've undoubtedly already done some research on it. So that would be a very fruitful source of investigation.
Now I want your 2 cents. My friend Ricardo, who runs the Cuban hot dog and driving range in Florida, is concerned about the look in the Eastern District of Virginia and the rush to indict Comey and the leaks and the firing of the U.S. attorney and the pressure from Trump. What do you make of all that?
Well, I have no problem with investigating Comey for statements that he's made. There is, I think, cognizable suspicion that he lied to the Congress. I have no problem with investigating. I think where you draw the line is if they can't make the case, they don't make the case. In other words, we don't pursue this. The process is the punishment thing, where we go after people who we really can't make a case against. So I'm content with them investigating, but I'm going to wait to see the strength of the case after they're finished.
And it had better be spelled out. It ought to be a talking indictment is what I think. If they indict Comey, it ought to be a talking indictment. Andy McCarthy says that's where you just lay it all out there. Do you think it would be?
Yeah, and I agree with that, by the way. I mean, it needs to be something, when you're doing an investigation with political overtones, the crime you allege needs to be something that people can understand in like 15 seconds. And then you do need to lay out the evidence well enough so people can see there's really some substance to this. You're not just retaliating. That was one of the big problems the Democrats had when they went after President Trump. I mean, except for the classified information case in Florida, which they blew. I mean, it was shoddily done. I never really even understood what they were indicting him for. Did you?
Oh, it was ridiculous. The DC indictment was absurd. I want to close by quickly switching up on you, Jim. You'll be doing Dwayne's World later, always worth a listen when you and Dwayne go through the news of the week. Do you expect at your church, whether it's in Missouri or the Beltway, that there will be more people there this weekend than previously?
Yeah. You know, it's interesting, because we've been talking about that at church. Our pastor last Sunday made a point of preaching the gospel. We did have a few new people. It wasn't like it was a huge rush. But everybody I talk to feels like something is happening, something pretty deep. And you and I know that, or can recognize when the Holy Spirit may be moving. So, yeah, we're preparing. And I think churches should do that. I think synagogues should. People, there's something happening out there, and, you know, when God's moving, it always produces a result. Dwayne and I talked about that the other day. He's written some great columns. I've talked more about Jesus on air and in interviews in the last couple of weeks than I have for years.
You and J.D. Vance.
Yeah. I mean, when Vance said that, I totally related to it. And I don't normally bring up my faith, in these interviews because it has to do with public policy or politics, but it's just seemed very natural. And I don't think that's an accident. No. So, yeah, I mean,
I don't know if
think
you heard Glenn Youngkin at UVA last night. Did you?
I heard clips of it, and he was very direct. I mean,
He's gifted.
I think your side of the house and my side of the house should both get ready for some more visitors. And I know you're doing that.
And my one biggest caution, September is usually stewardship. Don't do it. Right?
No.
Wait until October.
But we never do that. We never do that.
Oh, you don't?
When I've had guests, well, we have a stewardship, but if you're talking about don't ask new people for money. I mean, whenever I have guests at church, I tell them, you're a visitor. You're here to learn. You don't have to support the effort here. Some do anyway.
Presbyterians typically do 3 weeks of stewardship preaching, and that ends up in being a pledge card. Catholics don't do that. You're just supposed to sort of give year round, and they'll tell you when they're out of money. But there's this, among Presbyterian, there's a 3-week, I think it's September, maybe it's October, maybe it's September to October shoulder, where they preach 3 messages in a row. And I just hope they just don't do that this year, because they're going to be newbies.
We only do that when we have a building campaign, and we don't have one. And I thought the Catholics raise money because the priest comes to your house and talks to you about it. I mean, doesn't he do that?
Oh, no.
Don't they do that anymore?
No. They don't do that. No, they come to the house for the scotch and the cigars. They don't ask for money at the house. As far as I can remember, never happened to me. Jim Talent, follow him on X at Jim Talent. Thank you, my friend. Welcome back, America. I'm Hugh Hewitt. Guardians take the field in about 55 minutes, 6:40. This big kid who reminds a lot of people of Mickey Lolich takes the mound tonight. And he's a lefty, and boy, can he throw. So you might want to listen or watch the game. Relief Factor. Maybe I'll send him some Relief Factor. All right. A great sponsor of ours, $19.95 for a 3-week starter pack. You ought to try it if you have any minor aches and pains. Athletes especially, whether you're in high school or whether you're an old person. If you're working out and you've got strains and aches and pains, try ReliefFactor.com. I carry curcumin, resveratrol, omega. The only supplement I've taken for over 20 years. Been taking it for 12 years on a daily basis. Take it on air in the first hour, remind you in hours 2 and 3. 1-800, the number 4, and the word relief really does work. If something's bothering you, whether it's a hamstring or a shin splint, whether it's a stiff neck or your back hurts because it's a long drive, whatever it is, give a try to Relief Factor. The starter pack is $19.95, less than $1 a day. Call them. 1-800, the number 4, and the word relief. Say, I want that starter pack for $19.95. 1-800, the number 4, and the word relief. Or just go to their website, find the starter pack, $19.95, at ReliefFactor.com, ReliefFactor.com. Want to close with a funny story. My dad, though he was the Presbyterian, was chairman of St. Joseph's Hospital in Warren, Ohio, run by the Sisters of St. Joseph, for 6 or 9 years. I can't remember if he did 2 or 3 terms, but definitely did. And in that job, when I was in high school, the last kid left at home, said, come on, you're going with me to the state store. And I said, why? He said, we got to take care of the sisters. I didn't know what he meant. We went over, we got 2 of everything. 2 bottles of scotch, 2 bottles of bourbon, 2 bottles of gin, 2 bottles of vodka. And we took it over to the convent. Knocked on the door. I said, Dad, what are we doing? He said, these nuns work hard. They're running a hospital. And they'd like a drink at cocktail time. And nobody ever thinks that it took a Presbyterian to know that the good sisters of St. Joseph like to have a cocktail after you run a hospital with, I think there were 300 beds there. It's bigger now. But Sisters of St. Joseph, I believe that's the order. They are as tough as nails when it comes to running hospitals. And they were in hospital management before anyone. John in Granada Hills. How are you, John? Got 30 seconds, buddy.
Okay, Reason Magazine had a great article citing some congressman who said, 75% of the violence is left-wing. It is not. They included white supremacist prison gang violence in
Yeah,
that
I saw
study.
that. It's
Totally
ridiculous. It's ridiculous. That's why I believe the pronunciation is apathetic theology. You define God by what it's not. Political violence is not prison violence. We start there.
Yeah.
Well
Alan
said.
Dershowitz said it best. You know, when he said he's not worried about the couple thousand white supremacists, he's worried about like all these radical Muslims and the left.
Well, again, green violence is different from red violence. Sometimes they work together. I'm worried about red violence right now, revolutionary violence. I'm worried about Islamist violence too, but let's keep our categories straight. Thank you, Adam. Thank you, Arlie. Thank you, General Easterbill. I'll be back tomorrow on the next Hugh Hewitt Show. Guardians take the field in about 55 minutes, 6:40. This big kid who reminds a lot of people of Mickey Lolich takes the mound tonight. And he's a lefty, and boy, can he throw. So you might want to listen or watch the game. Relief Factor, maybe I'll send him some Relief Factor. All right. A great sponsor of ours, $19.95 for a 3-week starter pack. You ought to try it if you have any minor aches and pains, athletes especially, whether you're in high school or whether you're an old person. If you're working out and you've got strains and aches and pains, try ReliefFactor.com. Icarian curcumin, resveratrol, omega. The only supplement I've taken for over 20 years, been taking it for 12 years on a daily basis. Take it on air in the first hour, remind you in hours 2 and 3. 1-800, the number 4, and the word relief really does work. If something's bothering you, whether it's a hamstring or a shin splint, whether it's a stiff neck or your back hurts because it's a long drive, whatever it is, give a try to Relief Factor. The starter pack is $19.95, less than $1 a day. Call them. 1-800, the number 4, and the word relief. Say, I want that starter pack for $19.95. 1-800, the number 4, and the word relief. Or just go to their website, find the starter pack, $19.95, at ReliefFactor.com, ReliefFactor.com. Want to close with a funny story. My dad, though he was the Presbyterian, was chairman of St. Joseph's Hospital in Warren, Ohio, run by the Sisters of St. Joseph, for 6 or 9 years. I can't remember if he did 2 or 3 terms, but definitely did. And in that job, when I was in high school, the last kid left at home, said, come on, you're going with me to the state store. And I said, why? He said, we got to take care of the sisters. I didn't know what he meant. We went over, we got 2 of everything. 2 bottles of scotch, 2 bottles of bourbon, 2 bottles of gin, 2 bottles of vodka. And we took it over to the convent, knocked on the door. I said, Dad, what are we doing? He said, these nuns work hard. They're running a hospital, and they'd like a drink at cocktail time. And nobody ever thinks that it took a Presbyterian to know that the good sisters of St. Joseph like to have a cocktail after you run a hospital with, I think there were 300 beds there. It's bigger now. But Sisters of St. Joseph, I believe that's the order, they are as tough as nails when it comes to running hospitals. And they were in hospital management before anyone. John in Granada Hills. How are you, John? Got 30 seconds, buddy.
Okay, Reason Magazine had a great article citing some congressman who said, 75% of the violence is left-wing. It is not. They included white supremacist prison gang violence in
Yeah,
that
I saw
study.
that. It's
Totally
ridiculous. It's ridiculous. That's why I believe the pronunciation is apathetic theology. You define God by what it's not. Political violence is not prison violence. We start there.
Yeah.
Well
Alan
said.
Dershowitz said it best. When he said he's not worried about the couple thousand white supremacists, he's worried about like all these radical Muslims and the left.
Well, again, green violence is different from red violence. Sometimes they work together. I'm worried about red violence right now, revolutionary violence. I'm worried about Islamist violence too, but let's keep our categories straight.